Definition number 2, I'm just going to give you the algebra for it, okay? The absolute value of A is equal to the square root of the square of A. The square root of the square of A. Okay. That's a bit of a funny definition because it depends on something else, obviously. What is it doing? It's kind of doing the same thing this is doing, right? Because when you square it, when you square numbers, you lose information about them. Namely, you don't know what direction they were going in the first place. Because negative 5 squared and 5 squared have the same value, right? So because these are equal to each other, it's like I had information here and then it was lost by squaring. Okay? Which, by the way, is a lesson for later on when you're solving equations. And squaring loses information that you used to have. Okay? So that's why sometimes you lose solutions. Anyhow, you can also gain solutions, but that's another story. The square root, by definition, not this definition, but by its own definition, is always positive. Okay? So that's why you square it. Right? So for example, if I was to do the, let's take this definition, and I'll finish explaining this first, and then I'll answer your question. And let's do this, the absolute value of negative 3 this time. Okay? So this is the square root of negative 3 squared, right? Which of course we know is the square root of 9, which is 3, and only 3, not negative 3.
Isn't it plus minus square root?
No, it's not. Bless you. The square root, right? When we define this, it's only positive. Okay? It's only positive. As opposed to, so, you know, this is what I've just established, okay? If I were to give you a different scenario, right? This scenario, this is a perennial problem, okay? Here's an equation. And do you see why I keep on banging on about thinking about things visually, okay? What does this equation mean? This is a parabola. When is that parabola intersecting with the line 25? The answer is it intersects twice at negative and positive 5. Okay? Whereas if I said to you, what's the x is equal to the square root of 25, okay? This thing here is just a single, by definition, yeah, see the actual graph of this looks like that. Right? And 25 would be somewhere along here, and then the square root of 25 would correspond to
25 is on the top and 5 is on the bottom.
Yeah, other way around. Hold on.
Because the 25 would be y.
Yeah, I've just switched the axes around. I mean, my scale makes more sense if you think of this as 25 and that is 5. Okay.
Wait, what's the curvy line?
That's the square root of
X.
That's what the square of x looks like. Sorry? Logs look very similar, but they are different, and we'll get to that. Okay, so I'm glad we clarified that. Everyone makes sense. This is our definition here. Okay, let me just underline it. Definition 1, definition 2. I'm going to give you another one that seems even more technical. Okay? Number 3. I'm going to give you 4 all up, by the way. Definition number 3. This time, I'm going to borrow from the language of what we call piecemeal functions. Piecemeal functions. Piecemeal means things in parts. Okay? So I'm going to draw a big curly brace like that, indicating that the absolute value is equal to 2 different things at 2 different times. Okay? So here's what I mean. The absolute value of A, whatever A is just equal to A if A is greater than or equal to 0. Okay? I'll give you an example in a second. If it's not fitting this condition, what's the opposite of this condition? If A is less than 0, right? So if A is less than 0, for instance, if it were negative 3, right? Then the absolute value of A is not equal to A. It's equal to negative A. Does that make sense? So, in other words, this really means 2 things depending on where you are. Okay, depending on the value of A. If you're on this side, then you're this. If you're on that side, then you're this. Okay? Just a quick note, see how I've got the boundary, the 0, on this one and not this one? Doesn't matter. Can you see why it doesn't matter?
You just have to fill out the number planes. about all the values are used.
Okay, so number one, I just need to include all the values. I have to account for all of them. Number two, 0 is signless. It doesn't have direction, okay? So it doesn't matter which way I go. 0, -0, same thing, okay? So that's not arbitrary, it's just that it can be either of them.